welcome to the first episode of Walk, Talk, and Brock, Brock Press's only official podcast. I'm Christian. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Brock Press for the 2025-26 school year. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host for this episode, Mikayla.
I am the managing editor. This is my second year at the press. Last year, I worked as the editor-at-large, which is a very fun position because I got to write across the sections. I mainly write in the opinion section, which is just as fun because I have a lot of opinions and I think that it's fun to share them.
And opinion section is also the most fun section to write for, in my experience.
Yep, I totally agree.
We've also got Andrea here. She is our showrunner and producer, and she's sitting off to the side here, so if you hear a voice come from over there, you know who it is. It's not a ghost in the room. Okay. It is strange to do this podcast without a monkey suit on.
Yeah, it's strange to see you doing this podcast without a monkey suit on, actually.
I do have other outfits than the monkey suit, but it's in my closet for whenever I need it.
We miss it.
Yeah. Okay, the purpose of this show is to talk about different things that we've uploaded to the website recently. We've got a great team of staff that are uploading news, sports, arts, opinion, articles consistently. We got some analysis in there, some other things we're working on too, and we'd like to highlight some of the things that we have been working on. Mikayla and I feel like we're the best point of reference for those articles. So, Mikayla, what article are you especially excited about that you wrote in the last 2 weeks?
I mean, the great thing about writing almost exclusively in the opinion section is that every single article is so exciting to write. It's just so fun to get to find something you feel strongly about and just totally fall into a rabbit hole about it. Because we have synthesis with this topic, I could start with my opinion article on AI, which obviously has been a big conversation at the press. A lot of us have been writing about it, which actually inspired my article because I was reading so much about it. There's just so much to talk about with this topic and so many different angles to look at it from.
I think I've written 7 articles about AI at this point over the last
I know, years. Me too.
I should maybe slow down at this point. I think I've got my thoughts out there.
I was actually thinking that as I was writing it, I was like, do I need to talk about AI this much? But the answer is yes, because I have a lot to say about it.
There's a lot of students using it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I even see, in my day-to-day schooling, different students using it to complete assignments, and it's really taken off. So.
Yeah. And I think it is a perennial topic because not only is it just people using it widely, the number of users is just increasing, but also it's developing rapidly. As I think you mentioned in your editorial just last year, you could see if a picture was made with AI because it had trouble forming hands, and now that's just been blown out of the water, and there's these AI videos where you can't tell if they're real or not.
A lot of AI-generated images have problems with logic. There's these logical problems that a human artist would be able to capture. For example, if there's snow on the roof of a building, but then right next to the building there's no snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things that just don't seem quite right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way of catching AI images, as well as zooming into text, but I have a feeling they're going to fix that soon.
Yeah, I know. I have noticed that I can identify an AI image that has text in it because usually it's kind of obscured. But I'm starting to find that the text it's putting in is actually starting to make more sense, which is frightening because it's just one less identifier of an AI-generated image.
Less a random schmozzle of letters, but the letters I find are still a little blurry when you zoom in. But they're going to have that fixed soon.
Yeah.
And then everything will be made with AI.
Yeah, which is...
Excluding this podcast.
Excluding this podcast.
We have all 10 fingers.
We refuse. We have all our fingers.
Oh.
And I think, a point of frustration for me that led me to write this article, and just, background context, in this piece, I argue that casual AI use is more subtle, We can find this when you're making a Google search and the AI overview pops up, or even when you're making an Instagram search, their search function is now just exclusively, I think, Meta AI. So it just will give you an AI overview of what you're looking up.
You almost don't even have a choice anymore if you're going to be an AI or not.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the big points of frustration that I've felt with AI is knowing that, obviously, as a newspaper, we publish digitally, and just knowing that all of that could likely be getting scraped to feed these machines is just really frustrating, because you don't have a choice. If you're posting online, you don't have a choice in like where your work is going, and I think that is very exploitative for everyone. I think that's really unfair, and it's frightening that there's not a lot of legislation on this yet. It's just, I think it has become a game of like, how long can we go and keep doing this before legislation gets put in, if it does at all.
I had a professor last school year who was very explicit that any student who uploaded any of her content, like her slides or syllabus or information, to an AI database for it to scrape it, that student would be charged with academic misconduct.
Yeah.
Which makes tons of sense. But I almost never even thought of that being an issue. Everyone seems so concerned about don't use AI to get schoolwork done.
Yeah.
I never really considered, the idea of uploading things to an AI database.
I think it's just also frustrating because I'm pursuing a degree in writing. It's like a shared degree in writing, rhetoric, and discourse. Lots of people with that degree don't immediately know what it means or what exactly you're studying, but lots of employers see writing first. I remember looking on Indeed, I'm approaching graduation, and looking at if I didn't go to grad school, what kind of jobs could I get? And it was probably, I would say, a consistent list of 10 to 15 AI content trainer jobs. And they were obviously they were sponsored and everything, but there was just countless. And I was like, not only do I have to contribute to the sophistication of AI every day if I'm using the internet, but also it has narrowed my career options, because I would think even other professional writing jobs, even if they are not necessarily creative writing, which was not my major anyway, they are creative in a sense, because it's human writing, right? It's very disheartening, very frightening. So I've had a lot of frustrations building for AI, but as your editorial shows, that's not a unique experience.
Yes. So thank you for that. I wrote an editorial about this. I don't remember the full name. It's much too long. But it was about the clanker meme that I'm sure many people will recognize all over TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. The term clanker originates from, I think it's Star Wars. I hope it's not Star Trek and then I get my head bit off for saying Star Wars. I'm sorry.
I didn't know that.
It's from one of those, sci-fi shows. It's been sort of repurposed as this makeshift, slur, quote unquote, for what people think AI is going to be like in the 2050s, let's say. And then people making jokes that, I'm going to be the type of person that's not going to let my daughter date a clanker in a world where having relationships with AI is normalized. I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I mean, you see these AI apps. I think there's one called Replica. I've gotten ads for that before, where you can have an AI girlfriend.
Oh, I have heard of this. Yeah.
I think that's very sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
I try not to be a judgmental person, but I'll if you tell me you have an AI girlfriend, I will judge you for that.
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm sorry.
AI is really being shoved down our throats, right? And as it's just everywhere, whether you want to use it or not. Even though I tend to avoid ChatGPT and things like that, I still, when I make a Google search,
there's an AI overview.
Yeah, and there are ways to subvert it by changing your search inquiries, but we shouldn't have to be doing this. It shouldn't be forced on us. And the clanker meme is more than just a meme. It's almost because they're comparing it to how people have been exclusionary to marginalized groups. It's almost an attempt to marginalize AI.
Let's take out our frustration and vent.
Yeah.
By referencing these very real cases of
Mhm.
discrimination, but
I
point them
think,
toward AI,
mhm.
which
I
I
think,
think some people
yeah.
have pointed out maybe the skewed morality of that. I
Mhm.
mean, making light of real cases of discrimination. But in the context of this conversation, I'm more focused on what that means in terms of how these young Gen Zers and Gen Alpha, or Zoomers as I called them in the article, how they're feeling toward AI.
Mhm.
Which I do think it has to be pointed out that it is a little hypocritical in some cases, especially when so many of these, Zoomers, which I like that term, so I'm going to throw it around a lot,
Mhm.
use it to get, assignments done.
Yeah.
I think the most jarring example, I don't know if I included this in the editorial or not, people are making anti-clanker memes using AI to generate videos of like beating up
Mhm.
AI,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
the irony is,
Is insane.
yeah.
Oh, completely. There's competing discourses with AI, and I think that's clear how it is affecting young people because there is, obviously, we know, and the position I hold is like AI is terrible for the environment, it's terrible for
Mhm.
democracy, it's terrible, like, it is not good. Generative AI, at least, and having like free range and no legislation is not good for anyone. It's not good for artists or writers or just the average voter, for example. So I think that there's that narrative, which isn't, I don't think that's like a marginalized narrative. I think that lots of people feel
Mhm.
this way. And especially like if you're attending a post secondary institution in humanities programs, that is very voiced.
Yeah, it's a scary thing.
Yeah, it is scary. And then I think there is this competing narrative of, well, AI is a thing now. We should use AI as a tool to help humans. And I think obviously technological advancements help humans in if
Yeah.
deployed correctly. But I think it is these two competing narratives of like, well, this is being shoved down my throat. This could filter into like the human support superiority narrative that
Mhm.
comes like with these memes. Like we as humans deserve to use this tool because it's being presented to us. So
Yeah.
I'm going to use it however I want because it's distressing to know that it's interacting with my future in such a devastating way, but there's
Mhm.
nothing I specifically can do about it. Um, yeah, I do think it is these competing narratives, and that leads to this kind of hypocritical approach where, like, I'm going to make fun of this thing by using this thing.
Yeah, I'm going to use the tool to make fun of the tool.
Yeah.
You mentioned technological advancements. We do want, as humans, we want tech to benefit us.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a political take. I think most people would agree.
Yeah.
They just have different ideas about how it should be done. I do think of my second editorial. I know we didn't plan on talking about this, but
Mhm.
in that one, I do write about how technological innovation is lacking in
Mhm.
terms of at least hardware. And I think the irony of writing these two pieces back to back, the anti-clanker, editorial, and then the technology stagnation editorial, the irony is not lost on me. I realize that there are a lot of technological advancements being made in terms of AI. I just don't see those as things that are going to have a net positive thing,
Mhm.
a net positive effect on society in the same way something like the iPhone did. That's why in that editorial I mostly referred to hardware, better hardware. I brought up the instance of the iPhone, for example, and how that, I think, changed our lives in so many ways, whether you use iPhone or Android or whatever. The modern smartphone and smartwatch and tablet all sort of originated with the original iPhone. I think that we need more of that sort of innovation rather than maybe it's a hardware thing, but something about AI. I saw an interesting tweet, or sorry, I saw an interesting X that pointed out. I'm gonna call them tweets. I'm sorry.
Like,
No, if this were on the website, I would call them X's, but I'm gonna call them tweets here.
yeah.
I saw I saw an interesting one in which somebody generated, I don't know, like a family hugging their children or something. And the first comment was something to the extent of, what good can possibly come from the ability to be able to AI generate children? And that really got me thinking, what purpose is this serving other than, nefarious purposes?
Yeah, completely. I think that is just more reason why leaving things like this without proper legislation or control is just inherently dangerous. Like, there's nothing good that can also come from not having legislation on these things. I think it is interesting that, like, we're seeing AI rapidly advancing, and then, as you pointed out, like, hardware, like the iPhone, is not as life-changing as it used to be. And I do really think it is representative of the fact that so many tech companies, AI is like their new money-making scheme, almost. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing online, like, Google and Meta, almost their whole focus right now. Who has the more sophisticated AI or the more revolutionary one, right?
Yep.
The focus on, like, life-changing hardware is being overshadowed by thinking that generative AI will be life-changing, or it's the hot new thing right now that's making everyone a lot of money. I do really think profit plays into it. Even if there was a revolutionary new iPhone that came out, I think that it would still be overshadowed by generative AI, not only to consumers, but to tech world generally. I definitely think that because phones now have, like, obviously they've always been consumer items. So, like, the advancements they're having now is like, oh, here's like a slick moving screen, or like another camera and stuff, which is not revolutionary, but they kind of work as material capital. And we'll look at my iPhone with, you can see that there's a third camera, which is like a symbol that, like, I have the new iPhone.
I have the Pro,
Yeah, exactly. And you have, like, more knowledge on this than me, so maybe you can comment on your thoughts on that. But yeah, I think that's another reason why hardware has not been maybe advancing in the ways it used to, because it is all about the symbol of, well, how can we make it visually appealing, or how can we focus more on showing that you have the newest iPhone rather than working internally?
I would say that makes sense, other than the fact that so many of the new iPhones, you know, minus the 17 Pro and 17, they look the same as the previous years. It's becoming harder and harder to discern.
Yeah.
You know, show me an iPhone 13 and an iPhone 14, and I'll tell which is which. Maybe after looking it over and kind of holding it up to a flashlight, I could figure it out. But that's also with my, you know, knowledge of Apple and following them throughout the years. The average consumer is not going to be able to tell. My perspective on this is that I think smartphones have hit this sort of inevitable ceiling that they were always destined to hit, where things can only get so much better while still being recognizable as better. I mean, you even see this throughout. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk video games for a second. I've been holding back this whole school year so far. But you look at the difference from, you know, the PS1 to the PS2 being life-changing, going from, what, like 2D to 3D graphics, to the PS3 bringing into HD, PS4 being a smaller improvement yet. PS5 is... We've hit this sort of technological ceiling where it already looks completely lifelike. And when they sell you the PS6 for who knows how much money, probably $1,000 at this point, what differences can they possibly make when it already looks completely lifelike? The reason I bring this up in the context of iPhone is because I think the situation is very much the same. You have Samsung and Apple fans arguing about which phone is better. Look at the picture mine took, look at the picture mine took. When realistically, it doesn't make a difference. They're both fantastic. I mean, they've both reached this point, like I said, this ceiling where it's going to be hard to improve. And these differences are pretty marginal at this point. Like I said in the editorial, they're struggling, I think, to find ways to improve year after year. And these iterations are getting smaller and smaller and smaller between each one. Like the new iPhone 17 now has a 120 hertz screen called Pro Motion. That's a feature that was already on the Pro phones for years, like the 13 Pro and the 14 Pro. It's not even a new feature. And that's one of the things that tech enthusiasts are talking about is, oh, now, you know, the base 17 is now so great. It's not scary like AI is. It's just more disappointing.
Yeah.
Because I think this used to be such an exciting product category. But we've reached a point where it's hard to meaningfully improve without changing the form factor in some way. Like those folding phones, for example. I have
Yeah.
problems with those too. I've listed that in the article as well. But I at least commend, Samsung and these other companies attempting that for trying something different, even if it is motivated by profit. As someone who is excited by technology, I do want to see more innovation that's actually exciting.
Even with the iPhone or cell phones in general, like how much can you, if you're going to capitalize on AI, like how much can you really use in like a base phone? Like where can you even put it for it to be like functional? I mean, I know with iPhones we have Siri and things like that, but I don't think there's any major way that AI can change iPhones or just cell phones generally, which would make them revolutionary. I think that obviously they're pretty straightforward. Like they're meant for users to control them, right? That could also pose an issue for tech innovation where like all of our money is being poured into AI, but it's like how can hardware necessarily benefit?
I think Apple is trying to create a on the system AI as opposed to other companies which are doing it on the cloud. Now, I have to be totally honest that I'm not the best versed in what exactly that means. I know tech enthusiasts are saying that's going to be some sort of game changer to have basically the AI be in the phone at all times as part of the chip rather than need to reach out to some server like ChatGPT. But again, as someone who's just not interested in AI in the first place, maybe that puts me in a minority, but that doesn't really do anything for me. I've actually heard a few people, and I would never try to say that this is the average consumer, but I've heard a few people actually choosing between like the 15 and the 16, pick the 15 because, oh, it doesn't have AI built in, so that's a plus, which I thought was really interesting. And maybe goes back to this frustration about clankers.
I really think so. I feel like the kind of anti-AI stance, whether if it's like passionately against anything AI or just generally like fed up at this point, with hearing about it and interacting with it so much, I don't think it's a marginalized position, whether it's explicit or implicit. Like a lot of people are facing this kind of just general frustration. It has been so popularized, even if people are just sick of hearing about it. I do think there is this lingering awareness, because I don't think this is specialized knowledge. I think lots of people know, because lots of major news sites and stuff have reported on this, and it just has been in the AI discourse generally of like how detrimental AI was for America's most recent election, and just how like even AI data centers are destroying the environment.
Yeah.
And I think environmentally we are at this very like hypocritical time of like, okay, we know our environment is being destroyed every day, especially with mass production. But okay, we're gonna drive electric cars like Tesla's cars, and that's going to make it better because we won't be using gas. But then the batteries in those cars are also very horrible to the environment. And then we have the same kind of hypocrisy in like, oh, well, maybe we could use AI for like environmental purposes, but in doing so, it is destroying the environment. And I think just a lot of these competing discourses are kind of fostering a general frustration against the big focus on AI.
Almost feels from my perspective like there's nothing we as everyday consumers can do. As far as I know, there's no way to opt out of those AI suggestions appearing at the top of Google. If there is, I would love for someone to reach out and let me know, but I cannot find a way to do it, and I'd love to because it's wrong so frequently.
Yeah, it is completely. And I did actually look into this while I was writing my piece. So there's no way to fully turn it off. There's no way to fully get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
However, like I said, you can change your search inquiries by putting different like messages in your search inquiry. It like won't use AI for it. This is also like not accurate, but it's something reminiscent of you put like brackets, no AI. Even if you just Google it, which ironically, an AI overview will pop up. There's lots of tech sites reporting on how to like kind of avoid this AI. But as for Instagram and Facebook, because they both use Meta AI, I don't think, unless you like never search for anything again, I don't know if there's a way to opt out of that. Using AI does have political weight.
Yeah.
We are contributing to the sophistication of these softwares. It's really hard to put, like, quote unquote blame of this on the general public, because there's nothing we as individuals can entirely do to change the tech industry, but we are contributing to the use of these harmful data centers. I think that's why it's really just unfair to force this heavy political decision and kind of take away the fact that it's a decision and hide that.
Yeah, when you force this decision onto people. Also, as someone who doesn't use, or tries not to use AI as much as possible, I even find it hard to blame people who do just go on ChatGPT, right? It's essentially this godlike tool, the ultimate search engine. And you give it to someone and it can solve almost any problem. Ask it for a recipe, it just spits it right out at you. Or you're having problems with, your significant other and you need to apologize. You're like, write me an apology message. Or I need to write an essay, write me an essay. It's this godlike tool that when it can do almost anything, it's almost a little hard to blame the average person for being like, yeah, well, of course it's free, I'm going to use it.
Yeah. I
just think the implications are too of what it could do to people, namely getting rid of the ability to think for themselves and this over-reliance on a computer, and leading to the eventual, rise of the clanker in 2050.
Yeah.
Watch me destroy my social footprint in 2050. I'm going to get canceled in 50 years from now for using that word.
We'll set a reminder.
Yeah, but yeah, to me, it's just not worth it.
No. I think that you picked up on a really good point there. It is a godlike tool, and it's hard to blame people for using it. This has a lot to do with it, or can have a lot to do with it, like our building a reliance on AI. Because as we know, our economic state, we're not doing good economically.
No.
The cost of living is incredibly high.
Yeah.
For everyone. Jobs are nowhere to be found, but the jobs that are available are usually outside of your field or outside of your passion. We can see the sort of devaluing creative passions, especially with the rise in AI. So likely, if you're doing a job outside of your creative passions, I know this is a reality for students and non-students, you're just working so much to pay your ever-rising rent or to buy groceries that it's it does come with this intellectual exhaustion. A lot of service workers have voiced this. It's exhausting. You have to do this and go to work every day and then spend all of your money that came from exhaustion, and it leads to exhaustion knowing that you're spending all this money. And there are so many contributing factors, but I think that's just one of them. It's very hard, especially for working students. They're just intellectually drained, and I think that is what has led a lot of students to kind of rely on AI, because I would argue that a lot of the our standardized educational system, it does demand that you do it full time, and I think that makes it hard because that's just not a reality for so many people. It's not a realistic option, and I think that is where that comes from. It's going into a field perhaps because you're passionate about it, or I wouldn't blame you if it's just because you know that this will bring you financial stability, trying to maintain financial stability before you get there. All of these things are indicative of something else, but just overall, it's disheartening.
I'm glad you brought up the educational system, because that reminds me, I've just started the teachers college years at Brock, and so I've been learning a bit about my teachables, and there's of course been a lot of talk of AI in the classroom. And what sort of surprised me, and I should point out I'm very early in teachers college, so we haven't gone too in depth yet, is that there's almost this notion I've noticed of embracing AI in the classroom. This acceptance that, okay, it's here, it's not going away. We can't realistically get, our students to just not ever use it.
Yeah.
We can tell them that as much as we want, but it's an inevitability at this point. So how instead can we recommend them to use AI in beneficial ways that it's going to help, their learning experience? And how can we even use it as teachers to help us? We had to fill out a questionnaire that was how will you use AI in the classroom? And I answered honestly, I don't plan on using AI. It's just not something I want. Now, who knows, maybe in 25 years, when we're all dating clankers, I'll be a teacher and I'll be using AI just like everybody else because it's just what everybody does and nobody bats an eye. And my students are gonna forward me this podcast and be like, "Take a look at this, you geezer." But right now, I mean, I genuinely don't anticipate that AI really works with what I want to do in the classroom for students.
I also want to ideally go into some form of education. And I do think that because AI has kind of been just so limitless, like there's no regulations or legislation, there's no explicit and harsh regulations and legislation. There is kind of an assumption of like, well, this is just here now and it's going to be here forever. And I don't blame like the university for going with that idea because we can't rely on that like, oh, this will be legislated. That'll make you ill prepared if it isn't.
Mhm.
And I think that there is a big chance that it won't be because it is such a profit motive for so many tech companies. And then I think governments see that and then think, wow, this is very good for our economy to have this here. And it does kind of work in that way alongside that sort of teaching approach of like, well, AI is going to be here. How are we going to use it for good? We should also be advocating AI doesn't have to be here in this way. It is still very young in its current form that we know of, like that we're most familiar with. Legislation is out there that can limit this. This isn't something that has never been talked about before. Like the Canadian government has worked on this in the past. And I think that along with the warning of this could be out here, we need to prepare, it should also be like we should advocate that we don't want this to be embedded in education. Because even if it is a tool, you're still being taught how to use it. It can easily undermine your learning, right? I'm in a class with a lot of future elementary and high school teachers right now, an English class, and we have been talking about how AI really takes a lot out of learning and how, especially with young children, the passions you build around learning can be easily undermined by bringing AI into this environment. And I think that is a troubling thing of like with education, how do we make this balance, but also how do we encourage everyone, like you have the voting power to try to get this legislated. And I think that's especially important for future educators to keep that in mind. Like this doesn't have to proceed in the way it has so far. The reality around this can change, but also we need to be prepared if it doesn't.
I want to point out that I do appreciate, that the education system is open to adapting to new technologies. I mean, I think it's no secret they've done it before. Having computers in the classroom, for example, that's not something that was there 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Or students have phones in their pockets all day long. There's that joke that goes around that in the 80s, math teachers would tell their students, you're not always going to have a calculator on you, so better learn how to do your times tables, and then now we always have calculators on us. So it's not like I think that education should be stuck in the Stone Age forever. Okay, I do think that as new things come out, it's okay to consider them in the educational process. For me, it's an issue of where do we draw the line.
Yeah.
I think that what phones and calculators and computers and like graphing machines, and even like tools for dissecting things in science class, right? What those all have in common is that I think they can be tools to enhance your learning. You can figure out how to solve complex math equations using a scientific calculator. Using just paper and a pen, you'd never be able to solve. Versus AI is an interesting case in that I think it almost replaces the thinker.
Yeah.
If you have a calculator and a math equation, you still have to know the steps on how to do it. The calculator just helps you bring your thoughts to life. Whereas I think AI replaces that, and it just straight up gives you the answer. You don't have to think, you don't have to know, you don't have to, there's nothing behind it. Maybe that's an arbitrary line. Maybe some people would say I'm a total hypocrite for supporting educational innovation in some instances and not others. And I'm sure there were people saying the same thing 20 years ago about the iPhone, just to be clear. So maybe it's just that I grew up with phones and computers and I didn't grow up with this AI, that's why I have a problem with it. But I do think that this is different in, again, being a godlike tool that just solves any problem and is getting better and better.
I think that the important thing is if it has a place in education as an innovative tool, there still needs to be effort, because I think effort is really important in learning. Even with the scientific calculator, you still have to put effort into finding the answer, where the thinker is kind of replaced.
Well, I think that's about all the time that we have. I know you and I in particular could talk about AI for probably
Forever.
for 96 hours on end,
Yep.
but I don't think that would help our view retention, frankly. So I just really want to thank you for coming on here.
Of course.
The goal is to have a new writer or someone else special on, the press podcast with me every week, but we'll see. I just want to remind our listeners that you can catch more information about what we've talked about here and hear us ramble on your computer screen through text on brockpress.com, as well as reading a bunch of other articles from our suite of fantastic writers. Yeah, anything else you want to share, Mikayla?
No, I'm really excited about this project. I think it'll be a lot of fun because obviously we're all writers, and usually when we're writing about something, you can tend to see the certain areas we're really passionate about. So I think it's going to be very fun to have outlet to just talk about them.
Okay, well, thank you. I think this has been a great first outing, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.